and welcome to another episode of The Focal Thought. My guest today is Fred Luskin. How are you, Fred?
Hello there.
Good, good. Thank you very much for coming on to the episode. And Fred, you are the director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Projects, a senior consultant in health promotion at Stanford University, and a professor at the Institute for Transpersonal Psychology, as well as an affiliate faculty member of the Greater Good Science Center. You're also the author of Forgive for Good, a proven prescription for health and happiness, and Stress Free for Good, 10 proven life skills for health and happiness with Kenneth Pelletier. So welcome on this episode.
Sounds fancy, doesn't it?
I like to think that life is fancy. So I wanted to ask you, you are the guru on forgiveness, and forgiveness is something, people usually talk about gratitude, set up the resonance of gratitude to start your day. Gratitude will put you in touch with the frequency, with all that is good and, bring back to you. But I often think that even before getting into gratitude, forgiveness is something that's very important because, if you don't forgive other people, if you don't forgive yourself, you've really set up, these energetic blocks inside of yourself. And then, things like gratitude and love, they're not easy to, delve into. So I wanted to start by asking you, how did you get into the, topic of forgiveness? And let's talk a little bit about, the art of forgiving.
Let me respond by your insight into the power of gratitude. And I'll relate it to my own beginnings in this. But the longer I do this work, the deeper I appreciate the absolute necessity of being grateful. That if I don't see the good in this world, if I don't see it, then the bad in this world, because of the brain's negativity bias, will own my consciousness. So gratitude becomes the only way that we can actually see our life clearly. That until we practice gratitude, we're mostly lying to ourselves about what our life is like. So those lies accumulate, about how bad this is, how bad this person was, how much I screwed up. But when you add gratitude to that, you cultivate, or I cultivate, such a different awareness of the diversity of experiences and the possibility of all sorts of other things. And you start to see things clearly, which is one of the preconditions of forgiveness, that, oh, that's right, I'm not the only person who was hurt. Oh, that's right, my group or tribe is not the only ones that have been mistreated. Now what do we do about it? So decades ago, before I started the Forgiveness Project, I was very badly hurt by a person very close to me. And it was a very devastating loss for me. The betrayal went deep, and I really struggled for a while. And one experience that I had around gratitude was one of the things that changed it for me. I mean, it didn't immediately kind of, alter everything. But I was in a really crappy mood. And my wife told me that I needed to go to the supermarket. And this was when I was in the midst of, I'm badly hurt and nobody loves me enough and life is unfair and all the other self-pitying things that I did. And so she told me to go to the supermarket, and I argued with her that I didn't want to go to the supermarket that she said because another supermarket was closer, and I was just a crabby pain in the butt. So she persevered by telling me that there was an item at the supermarket she wanted me to go to that wasn't at a closer supermarket. So off I go, grouchy as hell. And it's around Christmas time, and it's busy, and I have to park really far away, and I'm just a pain in the ass to myself. And I go to the aisle where the item that she kind of told me I had to go for was supposed to be, and it wasn't there.
Wow.
So the self-pity turned into like a kind of helpless rage of like, wow, you know, nobody treats me well. But something intervened for a moment, and I was able to see for the first time, literally the first time, that I was in a supermarket. And it stopped me in my tracks. It was, wow, Fred, you're in Safeway, and you can buy, look at this, you can buy 12 million items. I mean, I'm still a snarky kind of pain in the gut saying, well, I can't buy the one that my wife wanted me to buy. But I look around and I see this like temple of abundance, which I had not seen before. And it shook me, because I saw then how much of my grudge and grievance against this experience was related to not seeing the good in my life. Like it was a transformational moment in, wow, you are missing so much of this world.
So this revelation, it just came on spontaneously right then and there?
Yeah, it came on because I was miserable, and I got this moment clarity, and then I worked hard to try to expand that moment clarity.
Any idea what might have brought on that moment of clarity? Was there some stimulus, or it just happened?
I do believe that there is some aspect of grace available. I don't know fully what that is.
Yeah.
I also know that the forces that be in this universe that are trying to show us love and goodness, they're broadcasting. And I work very hard not to hear their broadcasts. So the supermarket was always there. My loving wife was always there. My child was always there. Sunshine was always there. I just worked really hard not to see them.
Wow. So you would actually put gratitude before forgiveness?
I'm going to tell you now that in my cosmology, like gratitude is the wonderful quality that gives us access to good experiences, positive emotion, and it's easy. It's easy to be thankful for sunshine and fresh fruit and your breath. And compassion is the other foundational quality. Gratitude and compassion are the foundational qualities. Gratitude to recognize that in a difficult human life, there's still incredible beauty and goodness. And compassion to recognize that everybody suffers, that everybody has difficult experiences, everybody has pain at some point during their life. And those are the two foundational qualities, and forgiveness emerges from that and is like a graduate program. But the foundations are compassion and gratitude.
Okay, so you have to feel grateful, you have to have compassion, and then you have the ability to forgive someone for the act that they've done, or even forgive yourself.
Well, if you don't have some compassion, you either think you're being singled out for suffering, or you're incapable of feeling a kind of affection for yourself that will mitigate some of the hurt or some of the harm that you've done. So compassion is like a building block of the more difficult quality of forgiveness. So let me give you another example. Like gratitude is the building block to a much more difficult but powerful quality called generosity. So gratitude is great, but what the world needs is generosity. Like where you not only are thankful for what you have, but you want to share it. It's wonderful to be grateful and compassionate. Those are absolutely essential. But you also have to have some capacity to be forgiving of the ways that human beings all screw up, and including yourself. And so those are simply like more advanced curriculum.
Got it. Yeah, no, we're definitely not perfect beings. And I've heard you speak about, speak before in regards to, generosity and compassion. It stems from a feeling of being safe. If you could just maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, that forgiveness in part depends on being safe. I can tell you something around gratitude that might explain, not all of it, because I certainly don't understand all of this. Gratitude as seen in, say, Facebook or LinkedIn, that's not really gratitude. Those are more self-promotions. Like, I'm so grateful that I'm great. I'm so grateful that I got a job. I'm so grateful that, this good thing happened. True gratitude is humble. The defining quality of actual gratitude is humility. The defining quality of forgiveness is humility. One of the defining qualities of happiness is humility. The lack of egocentricity and the lack of narcissism. So when you say, when you post in Facebook, oh, I'm so grateful that I got this new position, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not actually gratitude. Gratitude is a humble experience for the goodness residing outside of yourself. That, people helped me, or this company was kind enough, or my friends supported me, but it's an other-centered quality, gratitude, and its key aspect is humble. Like, wow, that I never could have actually caused this on my own. But the humility in there means that you're open to seeing the beauty and goodness of this world without having to own it and without having to have people congratulate you for it.
It's not about me, I've got this position. It's about, thank you for the company for hiring me, and, the people for supporting me and being humble. Sorry, go ahead.
And the lowering of that bar makes you safer. The less you need, the safer you are. The more you need, the more threat there is all over the place to take away what you need. So that's the power of gratitude, that, wow, I don't have to do anything, or all I have to do is show up at a supermarket, and somehow the millions of people in this world who are cooperating, there's a grape there for me to buy, which is phenomenal, because on my own, I can't do anything. And my little green pieces of paper or my credit card, if there weren't these millions of other people, I have useless things. So that's the gratitude piece, which is it's always bigger than me.
Wow, no, I really like these points you're touching on. I mean, if I was to build a scale, you know, like in music you have scales. If I was to build a human scale, it would definitely include, you know, these words you're using: forgiveness, compassion, generosity, gratitude, humility. These are all sort of like the fundamentals of just being human.
Yeah, aren't they?
I tend to forget about these.
Well, I mean, that's how we conceptualized forgiveness for the Forgiveness Project, which is, I mean, this was 25 years ago, before there was much interest in forgiveness. But these are just human qualities, just normal, virtuous human qualities that can be practiced, can be uncovered, can be offered. They're not a big deal. Like you don't have to make such a big deal out of it. It's just human. And that's been a cornerstone of our teaching.
I like that you say that forgiveness can be learned. That's really important.
Like, why in particular is forgiveness important?
I was saying that I like that you say that forgiveness can be learned, you know, so it's something you can strive for. If you don't have it yet, it's something that you can learn to aspire to.
Well, you know, all of those qualities that we talked about are latent in human beings. You know, they exist as substructures, as patterns, as emergent qualities. So everybody has some aspect of forgiveness wired in. It needs to be cultivated. We don't have to cultivate it, but we can. So what our research showed back in the day with a couple of other academic centers was that you could teach people to forgive. That was the good news of the Stanford Forgiveness Project, that this wasn't just something for like somehow religious folks who grew up in a family that said, you know, you need to forgive because Jesus tells you to forgive or whatever. And I think that's wonderful that exists. But what the secular teachings have shown is that these are just human qualities that can be practiced and cultivated and taught and demonstrated, and that when they emerge, they have positive mental and physical health qualities. So that's the good news of it, that you can teach people and they can become better at it.
What advice would you give to someone who comes up to you and says, you know, I've really been hurt. Someone has betrayed me. They've broken my trust. It could be a business partner, a sibling, you know, a family member, a spouse. And, you know, they've done something that is just irreversible in my mind. You know, we've known each other for, you know, many years, and I'm really hurt, and the trust is betrayed and broken. What would you tell that person?
It would depend how proximate to the experience our conversation is. So if it's a week later, I don't tell them anything. I just listen, say, wow, that sounds awful. I'm really sorry. I'm sure it'll suck for a while. I mean, just any normal, empathic human sharing. If it's 2 months after and it's a really bad thing, I would talk to them about grieving. You know, that you're going to have to suffer for this wound. It's not going to go away quickly. And that, you know, there are stages of grief, and part of being a human being is to hurt when things are painful or wrong or difficult. But to give them some support in tolerating the process. If it's 2 years after and it was a serious thing, that's when I might talk about forgiveness, you know. I think you've suffered in a certain way enough, and being angry or feeling sorry for yourself or bitterness moving forward, that's not going to get you where you want to go. That's just going to keep you stuck. So, and if you want to be a little less stuck, you're going to have to give up your bitterness and self-pity. Like that's the key piece. But it would depend where on the time sequence it was.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that, the approximation to the event. And it's important, I imagine, we speak commonly about forgiving other people, but then you must also learn to forgive yourself, because you could also beat yourself down for saying, I was too vulnerable, I trusted too much. I shouldn't have trusted too much. I was too open. I should have, been more defensive, etc.
We do work with people who have self-forgiveness issues. I have some jaundice around that. Not that I know it's not a legitimate issue, but there are two caveats to that, the self-forgiveness piece, that I always bring up. One is self-forgiveness has more to do with what you do than what you feel. So if somebody is angry at themselves like 2 years or 3 years out, I think that's self-destructive, but I don't think that's so critical. What I think is critical is, have they tried to apologize if they hurt somebody else? Have they tried to make amends? Those are the important things. Have they changed their behavior? So if you're a drunk and 2 years later you feel bad because, you treated your kids badly, I don't really care about the affect or whether you feel better about it. What I care is whether you've apologized to your kids, whether you've made amends to your kids, whether you've stopped drinking. Those are the relevant variables. So that's one. The second is, I'm going to say the biggest problem that human beings have about forgiveness is they tend to be too forgiving of themselves. That we tend to let ourselves off the hook way too easily and way too often. And don't try to make amends enough, and don't try to apologize enough, and don't feel sufficient shame and guilt over what we've done. I'm going to say the actual real issue of self-forgiveness is there's too much, not too little, because you see how people just misbehave, treat other people terribly, and just go on with their lives. So those are my two caveats to self-forgiveness. Once those caveats are met, like, yeah, I do really feel bad and I have apologized to them and I've tried to make it right, then self-forgiveness becomes essential. Then you're entitled to, give yourself a pass. Like, you're entitled to say, you agreed that you screwed up. You agreed that you caused harm. You agreed that, that your screw up led to the harm. And you've tried to do what you could. So the only other piece is, was it a one-off and you made a mistake? If so, completely absolve yourself. But if it's a pattern, what are you doing to change that pattern? But the holding negative feeling towards oneself is really of secondary importance.
Got it. And then I wanted to ask you, I've heard you say also the charge is more powerful than the still. So, when we're dealing with these good emotions, it's a nice emotion. It's very pleasant. But these emotions that bring about charge, like, anger and, sadness, things like that, it's almost the energy is much more enticing than, the pleasant emotions. What are your thoughts on that? Are we just naturally drawn towards it because of the energy level? Or if you could just speak to that a bit.
I mean, the answer to that question is yes. Our nervous systems are designed to focus on what's wrong and what's threatening to us. And the neural pathways that create that are far better developed than the neural pathways of joy. So you have to work harder to experience the joy, and you have to have some capacity to turn off the relentless threat centers before the positive emotions can emerge. So that's one. The second is, and this relates to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs work, is most cultures don't want really happy people. They want people who fit in. They want people who tend towards the mean. But Abraham Maslow said that, one of the things you need to do to become self-actualized is to become acultural, like not rejecting of your culture, but not needing its approval all the time. And that's really hard for people. Like, we're herd animals. And so we tend to sacrifice our well-being and our happiness to get along and to follow the herd and to live kind of, in a consensus reality. But in order to often to do great things or to be really like successfully emotionally competent people, we have to chart our own course. And that's scary for us. So that's one of the things that we often don't like to think about, that, what, in the United States, 100 million people get together to watch the Super Bowl. There's nothing against the Super Bowl, but you don't need 100 million people to watch it. It's just not that important. But that's a cultural consensus. You could, there's all sorts of things you can say that if you get too caught up in those, you can often miss what one's own path is that leads to more positive emotion.
No, that's very true. And with the saying that says it's lonely at the top, the position at the top is meant for you to be alone, because that's what the position commands, I often find. And it's the catch-22, because you're saying, we are a herd mentality. No person is an island. So you really have to, I think, find that balance in between of dipping in and out of culture, but also making sure that you've, straightened out your priorities and your purpose so that you can live your life and not culture's life, right?
Yeah. And the other reason it's lonely at the top is you have so much, you really do have less peers and support. I mean, it's also a true statement of social numbers that, there may be one boss and 5 people under them at the same rank, but there may be 1,000 people more at the bottom of the food chain who are doing the same experience. So just for sheer social support, there is less at the top.
Yeah, and that's why I'm very sort of respectful of entrepreneurs, because, they've actually taken a hold of themselves, and they're the ones, who are driving up the motivation and the energy to, bring about the company, grow the company. And, they wake up every morning. It's really themselves they look towards for. They do have their mentors, they have their sources of inspiration and everything. But at the end of the day, the accountability is on them.
I 100% agree with you, and have thought that very thought, that we should really be giving appreciation to those folks who really march to their own drum and create something new. It's quite impressive. It's not easy to go out on your own limb and march there.
Sure, especially when you're a trailblazer and there's no precedence before you, and you have to, create a new industry or a new paradigm in culture.
No question.
I wanted to ask you finally, so after having that revelation in the supermarket, were you able to forgive that person, that did something to you, and was that easy or hard? Or?
I mean, I'll give you an abstract answer first. You can't really teach forgiveness if you don't try to do it yourself. People see through you very quickly. You should probably find a different line of work, because whenever you ask somebody else to do something that you can't do, there's a real insincerity towards that. It's like they find that immediately. Second is, if you're asking about the particular experience that drove me to this work, the answer is yes. We've completely rejoined our relationship and have been close again for 25 years. That the forgiveness was complete. It never really required much rehashing. And now it seems like nothing more than a speed bump. And I'm very grateful for that, I was able to learn how to do this and spare everybody more suffering from that I would have created. I'm very thankful that I didn't hurt anybody else. But yes, then there's been, nothing really for decades now, nothing but goodwill.
That's awesome. That's amazing to hear. Listen, Fred, thanks so much for coming on this episode and sharing your thoughts with us. I really appreciate it. And if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
I mean, if you look me up in Google, first of all, you can see like 100 YouTube videos of me teaching if anybody wants more of that. The books that I've written are listed there, and somewhere on the Stanford website, you can find my email. But most people just want to check out a video or check out what I've written, and you just have to look my name up under Google.
Okay, so that's amazing, and I'll put some of those in the show notes as well.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you again for coming on the episode, and I wish you well.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.